Esther 1, we'll commence our reading at verse 10, concluded at verse 12. My Lord. When you have it, let me know with the sound of amen so I can read this before I have a full-blown fit. All right. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Bactha, Zethar, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Assyrius, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs, and therefore he, the king, was furious, and his anger burned within him. This is the word of God for the people of God. Let's say together, thanks be to God. The time that we'll share together, I want to tag this text with this thought: I can't go out like that. I can't go out like that. Be seated in the presence of the Lord. I can't go out like that. I marvel. I am in awe whenever I consider the creation narrative found in Genesis, because God frames the worlds from his imagination. God's ideas spoken become what God dreamt up in his head. Let there be, from the very mind of God. And then it was. Before there was a sun, let there be light. And from the mind of God, light appeared. Because everything God speaks into being starts in God's divine imagination. From the ideas of God, all that is came to be. Until God decided to get in the dust and frame humanity. There's Genesis 1:26 that says, while everything prior to verse 26 comes from the ideas of God, you were made in the image of God. Everything before verse 26 of Genesis 1 comes from the imagination of God. Everything that God created before came from God's divine imagination, but you, beloved, came from God's identity. The Trinity had a meeting and formed a Trinity in you, your body, your soul, and your spirit. This is beautiful to understand, beloved. Here's what you need to understand. On the onset of this message, while everything else in the world was crafted from the idea of God, you were made from the very image of God, the imago Dei, the image of God. This image is spirit and soul. This image exists prior to any decision you could ever make to follow God. Before you get to know God, you need to know you were made in the image of God. Beloved, this is important because it stands to reason that even before you come into saving knowledge of God, you're an image bearer of a God you ain't even met yet. Before you can make a decision to do the right thing by God, you carry the image of God. What a powerful understanding to know that separate from any decision you make, any desire you have, you are crafted, curated, made in God's own image. Your very existence bears witness to the image of God. You need to know that on this last Sunday of Black History Month, you in a world that would tell you you are less than because of who you are. You need to know, beloved, that you are an image bearer of the God of the universe. When God made you how God made you, God was looking in the mirror. Everything about who you are and how you were crafted and curated comes from the very image of the God of the universe, who is so big races can't contain him, who is so massive gender can't contain God. God made you in an image, and that's why there's so much diversity in the world, because there's so much diversity in God's nature. No monolith is big enough to define and represent the God of the universe. That's how big God is. You're made in the image of God, and every single one of us has been created and curated in the image of God. You, made in the image of God. Maybe that's why we see the idea of racism as so evil. This is why I see the ideas that minimize women and children and people of different ethnicities and gender and orientation. This is why it is so evil, because it is a war against the Imago Dei. Our foremothers and forefathers took a spiritual and faith-filled approach to resistance of this work, because it is a fight against a thing that is warring against the image of God. This resistance is essential because God's made you in God's own image. And as such, beloved, you need to know, at the very onset of this sermon, we have a responsibility to appropriately steward the image of God entrusted to us. The first thing God gave you is God's own self. You being made in the image of God means the very first thing God entrusted you with is how you are, the Imago Dei, and you have a responsibility to appropriately steward the image of God you've been entrusted with. You have a responsibility to appropriately steward the image of God entrusted to you. You just can't do anything because you're called to steward the Imago Dei. You can't just show up anywhere however you want to show up, however people want you to show up, because you are an image bearer. You can't let people dictate to you how you show up because you're an image bearer. This is the idea of this text for today. I love y'all. I need you to buckle up because the next 10 minutes are going to get bumpy. But it's because I got to tell you the story. The text for today opens Esther chapter 1. You should know that the principal characters are led by a king known in history in the world as Xerxes. The king of question in Esther chapter 1 is King Xerxes, who leads the most powerful empire in the world at the time, the Persian Empire. Persian Empire is wealthy beyond belief. They have might and power, and there is a pending war coming. And it is Xerxes' desire to intentionally boost national morale for the pending war that is coming. There's a war on the horizon. He wants the people to feel good about following him into war. And if you want people to feel good, you throw people parties. Esther chapter 1 opens with parties. He opens Esther chapter 1 by having a party for all the dignitaries where he shows them all the might and power of the Persian kingdom. Everybody wasn't invited to that party, but everybody was invited to the second party, y'all. The second party was a party at the palace that everybody could come to, and you got to know it was the party to end all parties. It didn't start at 11 and end at 3 like some of the parties some of y'all are accustomed to. This is a party. Party. Drinks for everybody. Free wine for everybody. By the time we get to the text, beloved, the party been going on 7 days and the wine ain't ran out. It's that kind of party. They've been drinking non-stop for 7 days, eating, drinking, telling jokes, having a ball, enjoying the wealth of the king. They going off. While this party is happening, that the king is throwing, the Queen Vashti is throwing another party for the noble women of society. She at work. She's doing what she's supposed to do as a part of her job description as the queen. Jewish tradition says that while King Xerxes throwing a party over here and they drinking and being merry, as a matter of fact, the Bible says his heart is full of wine. He full. Jewish tradition says a discussion starts to take place. And the discussion that starts to take place around the king's table is, who is the most beautiful woman in Persia? And they arguing about who's the finest woman in the kingdom. And the more they drink, it seems, the more the conversation leads from a debate to something that needs to be proven. I need you to lean in close, beloved. You got to be real careful not to allow conversations to lead you to objectification. Listen to me real good, friends. An inappropriate understanding of the image of God in others will cause you to see them as beneath what they are and only discussing them for how you see them. I'm preaching better than y'all talking to me, because you know some of the conversations that take place around the mimosas at your brunch table. The moment you stop seeing people for the image of God in them is the moment you start discussing people in objectifying ways. All of us have the capacity to do it. And the Bible says that King Xerxes is tired of the conversation, so he's going to prove it once and for all that his wife, his woman, Queen Vashti, is the finest woman in all of the kingdom. This is what he says. He grabs 7 of his eunuchs, the servants to the kingdom. Y'all go get the queen and tell her to come here and put on her crown that signifies who she belongs to and nothing else. Oh, I got to bring it into context. You didn't know what it said. The command was for the queen to show up in front of the whole kingdom wearing nothing but her crown, so that everybody in the kingdom could see how bad Queen Vashti was. Go get her, and because she's mine, because she ain't supposed to have agency, she's supposed to be my property. Tell her to come here wearing the crown and nothing else, so that everybody can see what I'm working with. Objectification. She gotta show up how I want her to show up. No matter how it demonizes or demoralizes or objectifies or sexualizes her, she got to show up because she mine. And so the eunuchs go to the queen and tell the queen, you've been summoned. And she has a choice, because she chooses to take agency in a culture that would not give it to her. I need to say it again, beloved. She chooses to take agency in a world that didn't freely give it. And she said, no, I can't show up like that. I can't go out like that. I can't minimize myself like that. I can't show up how he wants me to show up just because he wants me to show up. No, I will not subject myself to being sexualized and objectified. And because of it, let me give you the cliff notes of the rest of the chapter. Because of it, the king is furious. So furious, in fact, that he calls a meeting. Calls a meeting with the wise people of society who understand the law to figure out what to do. Now, y'all, I know what to do. Seems to me that the thing to do would be to apologize. But that's not what they say. They say, King, you got to do something about this. Not because she was wrong. You got to do something about this because if you allow her resistance to be known, it will create a culture of resistance where nobody will stand for that kind of behavior, and all women will start to do what's right by themselves and take agency instead of doing what we want to do to objectify them. And you can't let one moment of resolve lead to transformative community resolve. We got to make an example out of her. We can't allow one woman's resistance to create a resistance movement. So the Bible says they put her out. She is banished from the kingdom. She loses her royal title. She is never allowed to stand before the king again. They get rid of her because she refuses to be objectified. There's good trouble. Beloved, we are asked daily to show up in the world the same way Queen Vashti was asked to show up to the royal court. You don't believe me? I'm about to bring it down your street. Because when you go to that job tomorrow, somebody's going to ask you to parade around so they can tokenize you with no respect for your intellect, your ability, or anything other than the fact that you one of them good ones that we've hired and promoted to put you in rooms so we can make you our token inclusion employee without respect for what you actually have to offer, because you got to show up how we want you to show up and tap dance in front of these executives so they'll know we like black people too. Show up today, sister, dressed in a way that will impress these corporate partners so we can get this corporate money that we're not going to give you a raise with anyway, or we're not going to help your community with anyway. But be okay with being objectified and sexualized so we can get what we want and you not get nothing out of the deal. Show up to give us what we want and not take agency. Yeah, black man, you project too much strength, so we need to temper you down. Lower your voice when you talk. Watch how you dress when you come in the office. Don't stand up straight. Sit down. Don't stick your chest out. Be minimized, because your very presence is a threat to us. And until you tone it down, you'll never be promoted until you learn how to talk docile and walk weak and hold your head down. You'll never get pushed up, because we need to show you how to present. We live in a world that seeks to force us to ignore the very imago Dei that we've been called to steward. But everything about who you are is made in the image of God. Yes, with your skin twice kissed by nature's son, you've been made in the image of God. With your kinky hair and your full lips and your wide nose, you've been made in the image of God, and you can't dummy down to their expectations just to make them comfortable. You can't lose agency and allow yourself to be objectified. We can't be objectified or tokenized to be forced to show up into their space. Appropriate stewardship of the image of God entrusted to you means you got to refuse to show up in spaces that require you to be objectified, tokenized, minimized, or devalued just to be accepted or appreciated, no matter what the consequences are. No matter what the consequences are. You can't do it. And I hear you. Wait a minute, preacher. Wait a minute, preacher. I do that because if I don't, I'll lose my job. I do it because if I don't, how am I going to provide for my family? I do it because if I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. So I've learned to subject myself to being demoralized and degraded, and even tried to learn how to live with the trauma that comes with it, just to maintain my convenience, comfort, and necessities. To you, I ask, what do you believe about God? Do you believe that the God of the universe still causes all things, even human consequence, to work together for the good of those who love God, those who are called according to God's purposes? Do you still believe that God is able to supply all of your needs? It's easy to shout over, but harder to walk out. I want to prove today, I ain't going to be long. I only got 2 things, 2.5. I want to prove today that even in this text, God uses Xerxes' human consequence to Queen Vashti to actually work out for the good. So that you might be encouraged to know that God can use what people do to you for taking agency to work out for you and for God's glory. You got to leave here today making a choice. Here it is. First thing you need to know is that human consequence is often evidence that you are participating in heaven's plan. Human consequence is often the greatest evidence that you are a participant in God's divine plan. Queen Vashti takes agency. She chooses not to show up in a way that would objectify her. And she's fired. She's banished. She loses the crown. She's put out of the kingdom. And I know you're afraid to lose because you thought that job was God's blessing. But what you need to know is, if God wanted you to have it, God wouldn't require you to be abused to keep it. If God wanted you to be there, you wouldn't have to poorly steward the image of God on you and in you to stay there. No, we don't like this kind of talk. But maybe the reality is the seats we're occupying aren't our seats to sit in. And if you gotta live beneath who God made you to be to sit there, it ain't your seat to sit in. Preach, Pastor Chris. I'm trying, but y'all looking at me crazy. Oftentimes, the greatest evidence that it's not your seat is that you gotta minimize the God in you to stay there. And anytime you got to minimize the God in you to have a seat at the table, it means it ain't your table. Anytime you got to minimize the God in you to have a job, it ain't your purpose. Anytime you got to minimize who God made you to be to get something from them, it means it's something you wasn't supposed to have in the first place. If you got to show up in just the crown, that ain't your kingdom. Lord, I feel like preaching. Here's my evidence of it. Are you ready? When Queen Vashti gets kicked out, they got to look for somebody else to take her place. And you would never know Esther if Vashti never vacated. And if you don't know Esther, God's people can't be saved because God uses Esther in that seat to bring deliverance to a whole people. Because Vashti's individual rebellion leads to an entire people group being set free, all because she was willing to get put out so that God could bring God's people out. And what I'm telling you is, if you get out the way and trust God with you, you're participating in a plan that's going to change the world, because their consequence is just a setup for God's plan. God, I feel like preaching. She had to move because God had brought Esther into the kingdom for such a time as this. And maybe you being abused is keeping somebody out of the seat God needs you to vacate so God's plan can be accomplished. And what Xerxes thought he was doing to punish Vashti was all part of God's plan to set up Esther. And you gotta learn, hear me, that individual resistance can lead to community emancipation. Individual resistance can lead to communal emancipation. One woman sitting in a seat on a Montgomery bus deciding she wasn't moving today. One woman sitting on the seat, not giving it up, no matter what the jail time was going to be and the fine was going to be, changed the course of human history, because after a bus boycott changed the law, a movement changed the world, because individual resistance. You'll never know how the world will change the moment you take agency. You never know how the world can change the moment you decide you ain't gonna take it no more. You'll never know how the world will change the moment you decide you're gonna wear more than your crown. You're gonna bring your brains to the table to match your beauty. And if you can't bring your brains, you're not gonna sit at the table. You gonna bring your voice, not just your beauty. Because if what I say don't matter, you got me messed up, and you need to find the wrong somebody. Because I ain't the 1, the 2, the 3, or the 4. If you just want me to get up to be black but not be brilliant, you found the wrong somebody. Because when I talk, I say it with my chest. I say it with intelligence. I mean what I say. I said what I said, and I add more to it before I take it back. Because I'm an image bearer of God. I got to move. Human consequence is often the greatest evidence that you are participating in heaven's plan. 2, I'm done. Human consequence is often the key to real freedom. All right. Y'all, Queen Vashti is thrown out the kingdom. They throw her out. They take her crown. Okay. Try it over here. Queen Vashti gets thrown out the kingdom. She's banished. She loses her crown. Wrong response. Queen Vashti gets thrown out the kingdom. She's banished. She loses her crown. Come here. But she does not lose her life. The king could have ordered her execution as a public spectacle, but she does not lose her life. She loses her position. She does not lose her life. She loses her privilege. She does not lose her life. She loses a little money, but she does not lose her life. And do you know why that's worth shouting over? It's worth shouting over because as long as there's breath in your body, there's an opportunity to write a new story. You might lose your little job, but you still got breath in your body. And since you still got life, you still got purpose, and you still got a story to write, and you still got things to see, and you still got things to do, and you still got something to accomplish. There's still purpose in you. And now that you've been set free from a structure that objectified you, it means you can walk in purpose in its fulfillment without the systems that tried to keep you minimized. Yes, you lost the job, but since you lost the job, now you can finally start the business and treat people the way you should have been treated the whole time, because you're free from the shackles of the oppression and the opposition and the objectification that you just had to go through. Because when people kick you out, God opens new seasons. When people say you gotta go, God says, come over here. I got something to show you, because pain is always co-opted into purpose. I wish I had time to tell you that you can't walk into purpose until you let go of present. Sometimes God gotta get rid of the things that are occupying your space in this moment to get you to the place that God's gonna take you, and he'll use human consequence to open new doors. God will use human consequence to open new opportunities. God will use them laying you off to give you new vision. God will use them putting you out to give you new creativity. And is there anybody who still believes that eyes have not seen and ears have not heard, neither has it entered the hearts of man, the good things God has in? Oh, God. All right. I'm done. Woo! My soul is happy. I got to get out of here before I lose my mind. Fitz, here it is. I'm done. Fitz, Queen Vashti is told to objectify herself and show up wearing nothing but a crown. Told to objectify herself, show up wearing nothing but a crown. Queen Vashti is told to show up wearing nothing but a crown. But maybe she knew, or is meant to point us across the centuries to somebody else who will show up wearing nothing but a crown. Because on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross. And I know you might not believe it, church, but they beat my Jesus beyond recognition. And when they marched him up Calvary's mountain, they put a crown of thorns on his head. But then they took off his clothes and gambled for his clothes. So Jesus sat up on that cross wearing nothing but a crown. And now I hear Isaiah say he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. Do you know what that means? That means Jesus did it so you wouldn't have to. Y'all didn't hear what I just said. Jesus took the humiliation so you didn't have to. Jesus took the shame so that you wouldn't have to. Jesus was objectified so that you wouldn't have to be. Jesus was tokenized so you wouldn't have to be. And since Jesus did it, by his stripes, Lord, I feel like preaching now. We are healed. Since Jesus did it for me, I don't have to walk in being objectified. I don't have to walk in being traumatized. I don't have to walk in being minimized. I get to walk in being healed. Healed from trauma. Healed from being minimized. Healed from being tokenized. And is there anybody? Who can say, I thank God that he took it so I don't have to take it. I thank God that Jesus went out like that so I wouldn't have to go out like that. That Jesus took it so I wouldn't take it. Is there anybody here that can shout with me and celebrate with me that Jesus paid it all? I feel like preaching, y'all. To him I owe. Is there anybody here that's grateful today that Jesus did it so you can carry glory and not gloom? That Jesus did it so you can carry honor and not humiliation. Jesus did it so you can walk boldly as the woman of God, as the man of God that you are. Would you look at your neighbor? Yeah. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I gotta encourage you. You don't have to take it because Jesus took it for you. That's the wrong neighbor. Tell that neighbor tomorrow morning when you walk in that office, walk with your head held high because you're an image bearer of the God of the universe who took humiliation so you don't have to take it. You are an image bearer of the God of the universe who took shame so that you don't have to take it. And tell that neighbor, hey neighbor, when I look at you, I see God on you. When I look at you, I see God in you. Y'all ain't saying nothing. Say, hey neighbor, you look like the God I serve, so you should walk like the God I serve and hold your head up like you believe in the God I serve. No matter what they say about you, you are an image bearer. God is in you. God is on you. Now let everybody that knows who you are and not ashamed of who you are, that knows who you are and knows whose you are, shout yes, yes, shout yes, yes, shout yes, shout yes. Tell your neighbor, I know who I am. I know whose I am. So I'll walk around with my head held high. I'll walk around with the strength of the God of my salvation. I'll walk around with the strength of my forefathers and the strength of my foremothers. When you look at me, you see a legacy of image bearers, and I stand on the shoulders of image bearers. You can't knock me down because I know who I am. You can't talk down to me because I know who I am. I know. Come on, act like you know. Act like you know. Act like you know. I know culture confuse you. I know the devil confuse you. But tell your neighbor, I said tell your neighbor, I am a child of the Most High. I am an image bearer of the Most High. Now look at your neighbor. Say, can I ask you one question? Who are you? Who are you? And if anybody asks you who I am, tell them I'm more than my degree. I'm more than my intelligence. I'm more than my articulation. I'm more than my skin. I am a child of God. Shout yeah!